Black Cat. Black Cat is a story that's written by Edgar Allan Poe, and the reason why I chose this story is that in Edgar Allan Poe's works, the theoretical approaches, in Edgar Allan Poe's works are highly open to theoretical approaches, and especially in the field of philosophy and psychology, and also Black Cat too. Black Cat's creation process enables us to interpret this story in a very different ways. And today I will focus on the narrator's dark side, his manipulative side. Commonly in Edgar Allan Poe's works, narrator has some dark side, and there are techniques to guide the reader for the narration process. The beginning of the story welcomes the reader with a quotation that serves to manipulate for the justification of the narrator. I want to talk about this quotation firstly. In that quotation, actually he implies that right now I want to confess the whole crime because this act is irresistible for me. But actually, this is an insanity defense rather than a confession. He implies that I will confess my crime because they have tortured me, they have destroyed me right now. And it means that I am the passive one, and the whole badness, the whole misfortunes are the active one. They tortured me. And please be aware of the passive sentence structure. And this is the most important quotations from the text. Because in here he implies that, okay, I will confess a crime, and this is a very terrible thing, I know, but maybe this is just an ordinary thing, maybe you can perceive this crime in a very logical way. Maybe this is just a chain of cause and effect. Maybe there is an ordinary behind the act. In other words, he wants to say that there is a third situation between two things. There are causes and there are effects, and there is a connection, strong connection, and you can see my innocence in the act. Here I want to talk about David Hume's critics of causality because it's, I think, really related. David Hume claims that there is no third situation between two distinct events, and their connection is contingent. But what does that mean? It means that, for example, in a very common example, the sun will rise tomorrow. But why? Because we think that the sun is always rise, and then this is derived from the uniformity of nature, and we think that the sun will rise tomorrow too. But David Hume claims that there is no necessary connection between these two events. But in the Black Cat, narrator tries to create a third situation. He wants to make us believe that there is a third situation that connects the whole causes and effects. And this is a chain that pushed me the act of killing. And right now I want to talk about victim complex in the story. As I said, there are lots of techniques to guide the reader in the Black Cat, and also commonly in Edgar Allan Poe's works. The Black Cat is a story about the man who killed his wife and the Black Cat. And there are lots of obsessions and conclusions in that story, but today I won't talk about them. I want to talk about more philosophical discussions. Here, you can see the victim complex's most important symptom. Victim complex have symptom that the person experience this complex see the world as two-sided, good versus bad. they grasp the world, as I said, in two-sided always. Good side, they, and the other side are the bad sides. And in here we can see this complex clearly. He says that in my childhood I was a very polite, kind and tender child, but my friends made fun of me. And we see this structure. He is the innocent one and the good side, and his friends are the bad side. He uses the victim complex for manipulate us that I am an innocent one in that story, and the whole misfortunes find me and drag me to the act of killing. And he wants to make us believe that there's a chain of cause and effect, and they are the active side, misfortunes, and I am the innocent and good side. And also we can see this structure again in here. Before this quotation, we see the distinction between good versus bad people, and here we see this distinction between animals and human. He implies that animals' love is perfect, they are good side right now, but people are selfish and they are the bad sides. And also, he wants to find some blameful things to blame. For example, he says that I used to love animals, I used to my whole surrounding, but because of the alcohol, right now my present characterization is ruined. And he wants to make us believe that I am again innocent, and because of the alcohol and my wife's beliefs, I am like that right now. And I couldn't take, but he thinks that my wife is told that, for example, black cat brings bad luck. And this is the effect of the act of killing. Yes, as I said, he always finds an instrument to blame. Alcohol, his wife's surroundings, his childhood traumas, the black cats, other actions, and victim complex is other symptom that the person who experiences victim complex perceive ambiguous or empty daily sentences as threatening. For example, I say, please listen to me, and you perceive that threatening as, if you don't listen to me, I will kill you. And when he enters the room, he sees the black cat, and normally cat's always running, and the black cat starts to run, and he thinks that he is running away from me. He perceived personally, intentionally, he perceived specifically threatening. And he caught the cat. It's a very important point for story. When he caught the cat bites his hand, and in that stage he says that I possessed by the fury of a demon. He actually says that my free will, my soul, fight from my body. There is a quotation, yes. As you see, he says that my original soul seemed at once, it was my original soul, and then demon possessed my soul, and right now you cannot blame me for my actions, and I am not responsible for my actions after that came. Because, as I said, he possessed by the fury of a demon in here. And then the bad, gene-nurtured soul comes from the body. Because he says that perverseness, in Turkish, is a very normal thing for human nature, and we share this essence, we share this structure. It is a very natural thing, and actually in here he implies to impulses, içgüdü. Impulses, as you know, cannot be changed because they come from by their nature, and because of we cannot change them, we are compelled to act them. For example, hungerness is an impulse, and when we feel hunger, we have to eat something. And in here also he wants to say that if you don't believe that there is a chain of cause and effect behind the whole crime, you can see this on purpose structure. Because if we believe the chain of cause and effect in the story, we can blame him. And since he prevents this situation, claim enlighten, perverseness. Because if we believe that perverseness is a shared and common thing in human nature, we cannot blame him for acts. And this is another question rises in here. Where does free will really stand? How can we blame the narrator for his crime? Because he shows us the chain of cause and effect, his traumas, wife's beliefs, the other situations that comes from the outside, external powers, and consequently, he acts a crime. He hurts the black cat's cat, and then he possessed by the fury of a demon. And after that case, there is nothing to blame in that story because, you know, some serial killers say that demon say to me and I act. And also, this act is irrevocable, he says. Irrevocable means geri alınamaz in Turkish. And again, we cannot blame him for act because he actually implies that there is no deliberation for the act. And then I am not responsible for my actions because this final thing is inevitable for me. Okay. And also, this quotation is very important for the interpretation of the text. In here, as I said, he says primitive or primitive impulses, and we cannot blame the narrator because of his instincts, because he implies that this is a longing, and this is. Sometimes he says we miss doing wrong, but even there is no purpose behind it, just our mind feel longing to the act of wrong. As you see, he says to do wrong for the wrong's sake. In here, I want to mention that Kant's ethics. In Kant's ethics, we shouldn't consider the consequences of the act. We just act for the sake of duty. And it means you cannot think other purposes even they are good. We just act for the sake of duty. And then here also he says to do wrong for the sake of wrong. Again, it means that if there is no purpose, if there is no chain of cause and effect in my crime, you can perceive the whole badness just for the sake of wrong. And again, we cannot say the blameful one is the narrator, because we don't know where free will is. And one scholar thinks that actually the word sake doesn't mean extraordinary determinism in the Black Cat. But why? Because he says that in this universe, what I can say? In that universe, maybe will is a free will, but bad in itself. And if it is, how can we say that we have no free will? Because in that case, free will is bad itself, and we frequently think that free will is an empty box, and we can fill it with our actions, bad or good. But if it's an empty box, what is its function in here? What it is? Okay, if we say that our soul is corrupted with extraordinary things and comes from the outside or internal things, maybe there is a place to free will, but it's restricted in that time. And then we don't say that the Black Cat's narrator have free will or not. And the other scholar thinks that it is very difficult to criticize crime or sin as vices derived from the rational human being in Edgar Allan Poe's universe, because we really don't know where free will is, what is his real intentions. We don't know intentions. But I think it is not shows that the weakness of interpretations or interpreters. It shows the intelligence of Edgar Allan Poe, I think, because during the story, we are not certain the narrator's intentions. We don't know why, we don't know where. Yes. And the other important thing, and lastly, some scholars think that actually this is not upside down. It means that we perceive the story as the defense of rationality, defense of victimization, but he says that, one scholar, it is actually not defense of rationality, rather than the narrator wants to show us his partial insanity. And this is an upsiding structure, as I mentioned. And why I say he uses a victim complex. But the other problem is that if there's a really chain of cause and effects, how can we say that he rationally used this victim complex, or he is a really rational human being, just and use this complex for just guide us to the narration process in a manipulative way. And free will, determinism, manipulative side, and narrator's unreliability is very important for Edgar Allan Poe's universes. And I want to say that I don't talk about Edgar Allan Poe itself in here. Actually, I'm talking about the Black Cat's narrator, because it's a character, and maybe you can find some common things, but narrator is a different part of the Edgar Allan Poe in here. And I read somewhere that Edgar Allan Poe is studying psychology while he is writing his works. And that's why we always determine some psychological illnesses, or their symptoms are very clear in that stories. For example, in Buries, the other Edgar Allan Poe story, this story's narrator says that I have monomania, and these things is being obsessed to someone, something, some thought, or the other thing. And commonly in Edgar Allan Poe's universes, narrator has some psychological illnesses, as I say. For example, they are obsessed with something. In the Telltale Heart, the narrator obsessed to the old man's eyes, or in Buries, he is obsessed to the young woman's teeth, for example. And he says that, and also in the Black Cat, he obsessed the cat. And he says that the cat is the cat pushes me to the act of killing, and I commit a crime because of the cat. But we cannot say that he defends his rationality, or he is trying to always rationalize the whole events, because the secret intention is here, as I said, confession, but for showing his partial insanity. And one scholar says that we can forgive confession if the person who confess use the ration. And if one people cannot use ration, he says, this case softened our hearts. And the narrator knows that. He also, the victim complex's symptom is that the person who experienced this complex wants to satisfy the other's belief throughout them. They want to convince us that I am the innocent one. Did you see that the whole world is distinct and bad side, and I am the one side, I am the innocent side? Please see this structure. And are there anything I can say? I think no. Actually, there are lots of things to say, but I have no time, and I have to restrict myself. And also, lastly, I want to say that, as you see, I couldn't talk about the ethical part of the crime, because one scholar thinks that Edgar Allan Poe don't say nothing about ethics. This story serves to some psychological and philosophical discussions, but not ethics. Yes. Thanks to listening to me, and Right now, my presentation is over.